Howdy! In this mini lecture we will discuss various forestry management strategies and the roles fires play in forests and various types of protected areas. The student learning objectives of this mini lecture are: assess aspects of forest management and describe methods of harvesting timber. We will now discuss forest management. Forestry quite simply is the practice of forest management. As has been mentioned before, forests are semi-renewable, meaning they can replenish themselves if they are not exploited too quickly. Foresters are professional managers who must balance demand for forest products, which are short-term benefits, with the importance of forests as ecosystems, which are long-term benefits. Resource managers are professionals who use strategies to manage and regulate potentially renewable resources. These resources include timber, soil, fresh water, rangeland, wildlife, and fisheries. Sustainable management, by definition, does not deplete resources. There are three general forestry management strategies we will consider: maximum sustainable yield, ecosystem-based management, and adaptive management. Maximum sustainable yield aims to achieve the maximum amount of resource extraction without depleting the resource from one harvest to the next. This strategy can be utilized for other natural resources as well. A population grows fastest at an intermediate size. The downside to this, though, is that the population is at half its carrying capacity. Maximum sustainable yield manages and harvests the resources so as to always keep the population at half of the carrying capacity. This allows for there to always be a maximum yield in the harvest. The downside, though, is when this strategy is used to manage forests, the ecology of the area is altered and certain habitats within the forest never develop. Due to the problems associated with maximum sustainable yield management strategy, more and more resource managers are beginning to use the ecosystem-based management approach. The ecosystem-based management approach seeks to minimize impacts on ecosystems and ecological processes by considering the entire ecosystem, not just the main resource of interest. An ecosystem-based management approach for forestry might include provisions to protect certain forested areas, restore ecologically important habitats, consider patterns at the landscape level, and preserve the forest's functional integrity. The problem with ecosystem-based management is that it's challenging to implement. Ecosystems are complex and our understanding of how they operate is limited. Another problem is that there are different interpretations and approaches to this strategy. Adaptive management is a system that tests different approaches and aims to improve methods over time. With adaptive management, resource managers monitor results, adjust methods as needed. Adaptive management is very much like a scientific experiment in long-term resource management because hypotheses about best management strategies are continually being tested and results are used to refine the management plan. This method is complicated and can be time-consuming, but it does work very well for resource management. There are several approaches to harvesting timber. One method is the clear-cutting system. In this system, all the trees in an area cut down at once. This method is utilized because it is inexpensive. However, this method has significant ecological effects such as complete removal of an entire ecological system, erosion, changes in the climax community following succession, and changes in the microclimate. A microclimate is the zone in which the climate or temperature is different from the larger surrounding area. For example, the area under a tree that is shaded has a different microclimate than the ground that is not shaded. Another harvesting approach is the seed tree or shelter wood system. In this system, a small number of large trees is left in a clear-cut area to help reseed the area or provide shelter for growing seedlings. The final method we will consider is the selection system. When this system is used, a small proportion of the trees in the stand are harvested, leaving behind the majority of the trees in the forest. This is an uneven age stand management system, which means that the stand of trees is always a mix of ages. It's important to note that all of these methods significantly modify structure and function of natural ecosystems. However, the latter two are less environmentally damaging than clear-cutting. Forest management has evolved over time. For example, the U.S. Forest Service suppressed forest fires for nearly a century because they did not realize how important fires are to a forest ecosystem. Thanks to forestry science and research, we now know that many ecosystems depend on fires for seed germination, grassland preservation, animal diversity, and abundance. Natural forest fires also removes excess vegetation that can act as kindling for future fires. The consequence of a policy of fire suppression is that we have experienced catastrophic forest fires that are much worse than they would have been had nature been allowed to run its course. These catastrophic fires damage property, harm forests, threaten people and their homes. The graph here in this slide shows that catastrophic fires now occur more often and are more severe than they were in the 1980s. After a string of severe forest fires in California in 2003, the U.S. Congress passed a law to encourage removal of small trees, underbrush, and dead trees following the fires. It's ironic that the act that started this was called the Health Forest Restoration Act, because we now know that removing these materials is actually harmful to the health of the forest. What this act called for is called salvage logging, which is the removal of dead standing trees, also known as snags, following a natural disturbance, fire, windstorm, insects, disease. While this seems logical, it is actually really destructive. Snags provide food, nesting, and roosting cavities for animals. Additionally, removing timber from recently burned areas increases erosion and soil damage, impedes forest regeneration, and promotes future fires. That concludes this mini lecture on forestry management. Please review the weekly outline and complete the activities for this week per the schedule set forth in the outline. Thanks and gig 'em!